So welcome back for you who have been following this webinar series from the beginning. And if you're new, welcome and joining the party here. We have a full virtual house today here with lots of participants live. Lots of people in Europe, lots of people in North America, and a few people in Australia I've seen, and some other places. So much welcome, and much welcome to Chris at Korfist and Cal Dietz, who will be presenting today. Good to see you guys.
Hey Peter, how's it going?
Great to be here. Going well. How are things?
Hello to everyone else.
What's that?
And hello to everyone else out there that I can't see.
Yeah. How are things going up in Minnesota and Illinois? Cal?
Oh, they're good enough. So
yeah.
Hopefully we get through this and things start to move ahead in a safe manner. So.
Right. What was the first thing you would guys do if you could just do anything you wanted right now after this webinar? What would you do? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, is everything open or is like now?
Right now, anything you want.
I don't know. I'd say if everything's open, I'd go to a restaurant and sit in a restaurant, like a breakfast restaurant. That'd be the first thing I do, is go have breakfast at a restaurant.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Drinks with all the appetizers.
Right.
All of them.
Yes.
That's kind of normalcy.
Yeah.
With a very fancy drink menu.
That's right.
Stuff that I could never make at home.
Oh yeah. All right. Before I get
just straight bourbon's getting old.
Yeah. Well, it's so good to see you, and also my dear colleague Ola Eriksrud in Norway, who is with us. Ola will be, if we have time, Ola's going to field the questions here for you if we have time for a Q&A. If we don't have time for a Q&A today, we are going to do a recorded Q&A, like we'll probably do it tomorrow or something, and then we put it out so people can view it afterwards as well. So we don't want to have time pressure, and we can do the Q&A later. So with that, Chris Korfist, Slow Guy Speed School, owner, founder. That's kind of your hub for what you're doing. I know up in Illinois, you're training all kinds of people. You're the co-founder of the Track Football Consortium. It's been very popular here in the last few years, together with Tony Holler and some other friends of yours. And of course, co-creator of the RPR method. I don't know, is it reflexive performance?
Reflexive performance reset.
Reset, that's the word I was looking for. And I know Cal is also with you on that initiative. Cal, strength coach at the University of Minnesota. How many years you been there now?
18, I believe, full-time, Pete.
Right.
So.
Mostly hockey?
I oversaw 12 teams, or yeah, the first 10 years.
Yeah.
So I wrote 27 programs a month every year for a decade almost. So.
And he's going to go back to overseeing 18 teams again.
Right. Oh, the 19. Because
no
you're the strength coach for the U.S. women's hockey team, right? As well.
Yeah, I am. Yep, I'm part of the women's senior national team, strength coach staff. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate, and it's been a fun ride with that. So.
Yeah. And of course, founder and the main driver behind Triphasic Training, which you have developed and kind of packaged. You've written books about it together with some other folks I know. And yeah, you're a well-known person, of course. And then the RPR piece that you do with Chris and some other guys. So we're really glad to have you on board, because you work in different things. You're really good friends. You share a lot, you work a lot together, but you also work in separate ways in different environments. And we really look forward to hearing your tricks of the trade presentation here. We asked to share kind of what's the good stuff you guys are doing, and we gave you, it's up to you now to yeah, just knock it out. And I know everybody is really looking forward to listening in and see what you guys have going to show us. So I think Chris was going to start, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand over to you as the presenter here. I'm going to fight the buttons here, make presenter, and let's make sure that your screen shows up there. And yeah,
good.
You're good to go. Thanks, guys. See you at the end of the session.
I'm not going to go to full presentation mode because when we get to videos, I know how like max headroom-ish the videos get when you play them on a webinar. So it'll allow me to slow them down and show you exactly what's happening instead of you trying to figure it out and then email me for slides later. We're going to start off with today. Our idea was we were going to show how we use the 1080, and everyone I know is going to say, well, we don't have a 1080, and then I'm going to show you ways that you can do stuff without the 1080. And then maybe you'll think about buying one, saving up your money and buying one. You know, I think we all wish we were in that boat. So part of what Cal and I are going to talk about are how we can improve speed. That's basically what we want to try and do. And with the 1080, there's a lot of controversy. Most of it's positive about, should you use, resistance to go or overspeed to get better, all these different things. And JB Morin's presentation through the webinar here talked about different kinds of things. And so I'm going to show you some stuff that we do to help get these better shin angles. And kind of my journey along this road was the idea that I'm a track coach and I run a speed business and I make my money on kids getting faster, or I enjoy winning as well. And so in order to do that, I want to get faster. In the schools I've been at previously, I didn't have the natural kid that can go out and run 10.5, 10.6, whatever. So really a lot of it has been based on development. And so along that path, we're always looking for ways to get better and at the same time looking for things to get rid of because it just doesn't work. And I think that's one thing that, well, Cal and I agree on a lot of things. And that's one thing that we are both pretty good at is saying, yeah, this doesn't work, or hey, what's going on here? How can we make this better? This is a great exercise, but how can we make this better? And so this is kind of my realization as to I needed to do something different. This kid is a good athlete. He is a all-state sprinter, a finalist in the 100-meter dash. He was 5th. He ran 10.69. And this is early in the season going into his senior year. And we're doing block starts. And I know you're on a gym floor, all that other stuff, the slip factor that comes into play when you accelerate. But it's what I had. And you just can't go through the season and say, we're just not going to do it because I can't wear spikes. So here's Matt. He's going to do a start. And he gets out of the blocks. And he is a returning all-state kid. So he has had success. And he's good. So he's going to come out, explodes out, displaces his mass pretty well by the time that first step goes. So he's got this great first step coming out of the blocks. And as we move him along here, his shin angle is okay. So I want to establish this concept as we go through this. My idea is that the shin angle is a vector of where you're pushing. So right now, Matt, while going horizontally, is actually pushing, I don't know, I can call that 45 degrees straight ahead, which is okay. So when people talk about the direction of your force, this is what we're looking at. And this is kind of my marker. So this isn't a horrible position. His projection alone is going to get him into a pretty good start. And he's going to move on here. Big push out the back. He's going to hit here. And he is going to collapse his heel down. And you can see that foot kind of mashed down in the ground. So now Matt is pushing at maybe 70 degrees. So that means a smaller amount of his force is going forward and more is going vertical. To compensate for that, he's going to have an excessive lean. He's going to roll forward, anything that he can do. So the sum of all of his push is going to get to his target, which is accelerate and move forward. Because he has no forefoot rocker, which we're going to get to in a second, he hyperextends that near, extends it fully, and he kind of puts him into a bad position. So there's a good angle right there. That foot is flat, collapsed a little bit, ankle is locked out, and he is pushing straight up and down. Same situation. Again, this kid's an all-state athlete. He is an all-state running back and an all-state 100-meter dash kid. He's run 10.9 at 215 pounds. played as a freshman at University of Illinois, true freshman. He's a stud. And his goal, because if you weigh 215 and you break 11 flat, everyone's going to offer you money, which was the situation that he was in. So Nick drives out. Not horrible there. He's got a little more force forward than Matt did, but then he is going to hit, and this left leg is going to collapse. And just like Matt, he's at almost 80 degrees. And so sometimes you'll see bodies waggle back and forth depending on what's going on with that shin. Because remember, everything is going to be a combination to your reaction on the ground and what your target is. Your body's going to find a way instantly to get you to that target based on what is happening on the ground.
Chris, and you've made this point, is this correct that with a higher shin angle, they lean forward more?
Yeah, they're going to get
go forward,
yes.
correct?
Yeah, so they're going to compensate for that lack of horizontal force. And so as you lean, you can see Nick's spine is bent a little bit. You're not going to get that great contraction that you need to really be powerful.
And so, and to ask a question, Chris, for the audience, like when you have this, like a lot of acceleration is not the repetitiveness, but when you have these, what injuries will you see in sports because of the indicators that are here? What do you think the key injuries that you'll see in sports because of these problems?
These are kids that, in my opinion, we know you get different hamstring pulls in different places. Most sprinters will get them coming out of the blocks. And to me, this is someone who is going to get it coming out of the blocks because that spine is not in a great position. You can never fire your glute very well when your spine is flexed like that. And so you're dumping all that into your hamstring. Now, depending on what his foot function is and a couple other variables, that's where you can be. You know, I'm plugging RPR, but you know, most of my kids never get into these problems because usually with RPR, you find another way. You can still protect yourself by doing that. But back to the point here, yeah, Nick is pushing straight up and down by his second step. We do such a good job on that initial block clearance velocity to that first step. It helps a lot. But if we can get a better shin angle, you're going to see it. You're going to see a faster kid. And here's someone who's been really well coached. He's going to have all of the KPIs that people like to look for, most people look for. First press, a good shin angle there. He's got that rip and split. I mean, that looks like right out of a textbook, right? And this is a guy trying to make it in the NFL. So he has done everything his coaches has asked. They've looked on film and said, yep, looks great. Step comes down, looks good. Stepping behind, but watch what happens to this foot. Collapses down to the ground. So now his vector is not as horizontal as it needs to be. In fact, when he steps and pushes, it almost looks like he's going to press, like he's jumping off an elevator and the elevator bottom drops out and he's got no push. I mean, look at how his knee has to do the work that his foot should be doing by extending. And I'm not a big fan of getting that knee in full extension out back when you're going. It's going to change your pelvic tilt, and it takes longer to pull that pelvis through. So again, lots of hang time hits.
Can I jump in? What
Sure.
Chris said there was he's not a fan of full extension, and it appears that true full extension with these elite kids or elite runners is a sign of a dysfunctional foot. Am I correct, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Foot and ankle complex. Because when we get to forefoot rocker, which I'll get to in a second, I'm going way over time. Sorry, Cal. I'll jump to a good one here. So here she goes. She's going to push. Look at how her shin drops down. Incredible velocity of first step. Foot hits. And here is her forefoot rocker, which means she is rolling over the ball of the foot and that's what gets that shin to drop down. So compared to the other three guys who are all three accomplished athletes, this girl is world class. And you can see the difference in that shin angle. And it may only be 10 or 15%, but she has that much more forward velocity, horizontal velocity. And the more horizontal velocity you get, the more stable the system is going to be. It's like a wobbly bike. When you go slow on a bike, you wobble back and forth, and you have to spend a lot of your time trying to balance. But if you have that velocity, you don't have to spend as much time in proprioception and balance, because the speed or the velocity is taking care of your stability. So here she goes again. She's going to hit down. Here's that forefoot rocker, which we're going to look at here, and look at her shin drop down. So when she goes to press, it's lower than her first step. So all of her force is going forward. And you can see she's built pretty well, so that's quite a bit of force going forward, which is why even at a national level, she is usually winning the race by her third step, because all the other girls aren't pushing as much as forward as possible. And there's her third step. Her shin is still down. So when JB Morgan talks about rate of diminishing force, this is what we're talking about. She can stay in a horizontal state a longer period of time. And what I found on the 1080 is when I'm tracking people for 40 meters, a lot of pretty good people start to flatten out at 20 meters. Your really good ones can go, you still have an improvement in the curves at 25 to 30 meters. And Samira here would be one of those girls that can do that. Even though she can't run a 10.5 like some of these guys, her mechanics are much better for what she has. So that's great, right? I'm a thermometer. I told you what the temperature is. How are we going to make the changes? Let's be a thermostat. So here's my drill. So this is it is a drill that works on what forefoot rocker is. Now, if you've seen my stuff in the past, you know what ankle rocker is, which is my ability to drive my shin or let my shin float through the range of motion so my momentum goes forward. But now we've got to drop that shin down and allow for a little horizontal force. So you can use a 1080, you can use a rubber band. And what you're going to do is you are going to use the resistance to take up your body weight. So you can see this person has on a blue band. And this kid would have been state champion in the 100-meter dash this year in the state of Illinois if we had a season. So he does this pretty well. So you can see that he is working on dropping his shin down. So as he rolls forward, he's rolling over the top of his foot, and then he's going to step down. Now you'll notice with Marshall here that his knee does not extend. If your knee extends, your heel drops down. That's kind of like the conundrum of your forefoot rocker. If you bail out and extend that knee, you can never get to forefoot rocker, which means I'm going to lose horizontal force. You pop that knee straight, what automatically happens to the shin? You pop up 10, 15 degrees. So whether you're on a 1080, a rubber band, holding up against a door, you can learn to find these positions. And that's part of what this is you have to train your body to find these positions. So from a neurologic sense, your body says, hey, this is okay, I can do this. And then, here he is going by, so you can see again from different angle. You can see all my kids are doing it, but the rubber bands, the resistance takes up body weight. Then we're going to complicate it. Everyone knows I love to change the environment. So I'm going to put a water bag over your head so that's constantly moving, with the idea that the more unstable I am on the upper body, the more stable I need to be on the lower body. And so here goes Marshall with the water bag. Come on, Marshall. You can see he struggled a little bit there to find it. But again, we're learning where the body can go and that it's safe to do that. You know, part of the factor of acceleration is you have to learn that I'm not going to fall, because it is a stumble reflex. So now I'm going to put you on a 1080. I'm going to band it up. And again, I'm not measuring power here. I am allowing the 1080 to take up body weight. The heavier it is, the easier this drill is. Now I can quantify where they're at, and I can drop the weight, make it lighter, and this drill becomes harder. So our goal is projecting out, dropping shins down, and working those shin angles. I'll play it again here. Go slow motion so you don't have max headroom effect. And I think I'm the only person old enough, or Cal's old too. He knows who Max Headroom is from the 80s on MTV, back when MTV played videos. So the weight is heavy. You can see it's doubled up. Drops that shin down. And all we're working on is getting that shin down and driving. He is getting pure horizontal force when we're doing this. And you can see how he's rocking over his foot. His heel comes forward. That's what we want to do. And you're going to say, well, I don't have a 1080. All right, here we are in a cafeteria with a rubber band. I think everyone's got a cafeteria. Everyone's got a rubber band, or you should have a rubber band. Same thing. The rubber band takes up the body weight so he can work on horizontal force. You won't find any fast person that doesn't look like that, where they can drop those shins down.
Chris, one thing you can do, I've done, is double those bands, so it gives you a little bit more margin for error. You know what I'm saying? Gets the same tension. Yeah. If you have bands, if you're in the Big Ten, you got budgets. So.
But again, the idea isn't so much that how much can we pull, it's can I push forward, and I'm going to allow the rubber band to get my body into that position. Any questions on that? Those are some really good drills. I'm going to pub it because I can. Cal and I are going to do a webinar next week, and we're going to go over this stuff in a lot more detail. And I'll post that information up here at the end of my stuff. So other stuff to look at. How am I on time? Oh, I'm way over. Overspeed training. Things that we do. What's that?
Just keep rolling.
Keep rolling?
I can cut mine down. Yeah, it'll be fine. I'll get it out there.
I love overspeed training. People say you should only do it with older athletes. No, young bodies learn. The brain learns, especially when you're younger, to go through stuff. Why do I do it? This is research that I did with Ken Clark and Michal Cahill. He's from Ireland. And he's fun to make fun of because if you call him Michael, he gets pissed. But our idea was we did all kinds of variables while you were getting pulled in overspeed. And this paper hasn't been in a publication. It's out there. You know, everything's backed up these days. But here's what we found. And of course, Ken Clark, you put Ken Clark's name, it's his thing. You're always going to get attention. Of course, you're going to get increased stride length, but you also got improved vertical forces. And at top end speed, we need to improve vertical forces. And the reason why that was the body figured out, now let me jump to this slide here. The body figured out it was going faster. And so what it did is it had to pre-tense, so you had a springier ankle. And if you can look up the paper online, and we've got all of our data that shows that. But that's basically what we went to, or that's what we found in this paper. And we had 2 days. I think we had 44 people come in. The slowest guy was an 11.4, and the fastest guy was a 10.2. So we had quite a range of people that came through, and we also had women, and we found the same thing. We had some really fast girls and some girls that were really good. And up and down the line, we found this to be the case. And if you want to see what that looks like, I'll play this video here. I stole this from Ken Clark. He does all the fancy video stuff. So we pulled, you got to run in, sprint into 30 meters. We had all kinds of cameras. We're measuring contact times. You can see that he's getting towed. But some people say that you break when you overspeed train. We did not find that to be true. The only people that you find that with are people that are afraid to go fast, which is a reason why I like to do overspeed training, is you are training your vestibular system that it's okay to go faster. And if you don't think that's true, go stand up on something that's higher than you're comfortable with, which you're comfortable with is about as high as you can vertical jump. Go stand up on a 60-inch box and watch how your body responds to standing up there and someone asks you to jump down. You're going to squat down, you're going to do all kinds of different things, so your brain thinks it's not nearly as far to drop, so you feel safe. So how I've progressed that is, some people think that this is the king of all speed exercises, and I tend to agree. We do overspeed training with wickets. So I can change the distance in between the wickets. You see I have mats out here. I can change contacts and things like that. But basically, I'm going to pull you through. Sometimes when you do overspeed training, especially with people that don't get it, they're just getting dragged. There's no target for them to run through. But if I put wickets down and I'm pulling you through fast, you know that you have to make that target, because deep down, everyone fears hitting a wicket and tripping. And I will make a side note, I have never, ever had anyone fall or trip doing overspeed training. And I've told a lot of people. So here comes Sabrina. She's cooking. She would have been on the Olympic softball team, but there's no Olympics. But you can see she has to be perfect. There's a frequency involved, so she's got a target with the frequency, and she's got to hit every one. And then you can see there's the machine, and she's got all that runway to slow down. We'll vary that, we'll put hands overhead, we'll put wearable resistance on, we'll do all kinds of different things to make that more challenging, so the brain has to learn to move quicker. And you're gonna say, well, I don't have a 1080 to do overspeed. Well, here's another way you can do it. I hope this plays properly. Oop, wrong one. You can get a big dog that knows how to grab your head. Oh, it stopped. And you are going to certainly run faster if this dog is after you. Here comes the good jump right here. But some of you may say, I don't like dogs. Well, then you've got a car. You can always drag the kid, or just have the big dog drag you. But there's really better things to do than mess with your dog and your son. You can raise the ground with mats, because the ground comes sooner than you think. It's an actual overspeed stimulus. And there's nothing wrong. I have seen people daisy chain a whole bunch of really light rubber bands, and you just kind of pull people down, and you're only going to get 5 or 6 good steps. And that's all I get with the 1080 as well. But here I've raised the mat, I've raised the ground, so your foot has to pre-tense. And that's a great drill. Or I can make the whole thing go faster. Let me turn the volume down, because I scream at this kid for messing with the camera. So again, I have to pre-tense because my foot is coming down faster. Any kind of variable on that. You can do it on and off a mat, so you have a little bit of a step up. You can do it on 1 foot on an RX mat, 1 foot off. So again, I've destabilized the floor, so my ankle has to be stiffer. And then I can apply that to other things as well. So here's overspeed with acceleration. I'm going to pull you, and I'm just going to do your first 4 or 5 steps. This is going to be a little bit different, because again, just like pressing into the band so it holds your body weight, now I'm pulling your body weight out so your body learns to step behind and get your shin down. In this case, I'm pulling, this is Sydney Kopp. She was the Division III NCAA Women's Basketball Player of the Year. And one thing that we really work on is dribbling frequency. Some people say the key to being a good guard is not only your ball handling skills, but your frequency and how hard you dribble. So she's dribbling a ball and I'm pulling her, and she's got to learn to find that ball. Oops. So I'm challenging that skill while she's going fast. Here it is with agility. Whatever, we're running hula hoops. My son's a volleyball player. And so he's going to get some tension going out, but when he comes back, he's got to learn to put his feet in the right place so he doesn't fall.
Chris,
And again, if I have a learning curve there that I'm going faster, your brain's going to say, hey, yeah, let's go ahead and move. Cal?
to put in perspective, Chris, would you agree that this is real life sports balance that you're adjusting to through the paraspinals and everything that's stabilizing versus standing on a pad?
Absolutely.
Or a post? This is sport specific balance.
We have been fooled into thinking that proprioception is this long duration thing while I'm standing on an Eric's mat and balancing like I'm in the circus. Real sport takes place, and sometimes you're going too fast and you fall or you slip. Now you're going faster and you have to learn how to navigate through the systems. I'll change the distance between the hoops. I will change angles. We'll do all different kinds of things. So basically when he gets pulled back, he's got to learn to put his feet in the right place every time. So every exercise, every time you do agility, it's going to happen faster than you're used to. Therefore, when you go to play, your body's going to feel more secure and safe about what's going on, and you're going to be a better athlete.
Chris, this is by far the most sport specific balance training, in my opinion, you can do. I'm not saying the other stuff on a Bosa ball static is not. And if they're injured, they need that particular stuff. But this adjustments that have to happen at high speed that your brain's processing while your eyes are moving and your head's moving, maybe you get fixed on a target while you do that with your vision system. Would you agree it's probably the best you can get in regards to balance, speed, and agility?
I agree. And that's why I do it. And people say, well, what about younger kids? Absolutely. They learn faster. Remember, it's about learning and challenging your brain into doing different things. So all of a sudden the game speed isn't as scary anymore.
It's crazy to me how they think, whoa, young kids, like they can handle more volume than we think. They can handle more, they learn skills faster than we could ever imagine. You know what I'm saying? And that's my thing. I'm like, right now I'm training my son. He's doing German volume training. He's 14. Why not?
Why not? His body's going to learn to accommodate that very quickly.
And I check him on the heart rate variability device. Guess what? He's good to go every day. So yeah, my rant's over. Sorry.
I wish I could say about my son, he stays up till 3 in the morning right now playing video games and then sleeps till 3 in the afternoon. And we're having a war over this where I think I'm just going to smash his computer. But that's a different topic altogether. But like Cal said, you can change this exercise just by changing what your focus is with your vision. For a volleyball player, we should probably have a ball bouncing around on the other side or reacting to the ball. Watch birds fly while you're doing these things. That's hard to do. It's hard to track and move at the same time. But what do we know about elite athletes? They can track and move at the same time. And that's, again, we're adding all the elements into a good agility program. I'm almost done, Cal. I've got 2 more.
Chris, how fast can you bring up the Falcon?
The Falcon?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it
What's
on
that?
Where the Falcon's head is not
Oh,
moving?
the vestibular thing?
Yeah.
While you're going, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, perfect. We'll show it later.
And then another thing I like to do is challenging body with variable resistance. We'll start with a heavy pull on the 1080. Oh, and by the way, for this agility thing, you can wrap rubber bands. What you can do is put a rubber band around the waist, and they can, string a couple rubber bands, and you'll stand one place or another as they run through whatever path or obstacle course you create. And as you're holding the rubber band, you can move as well too. So the resistance has to change. So your body constantly has to make assessments about where it's going to be. So when I have my football teams, we actually use rubber bands because I only have one 1080, and we'll do that. And it works really well, especially with big linemen where they are learning where to put their feet in very fast fashion. And that's a key for a good offensive lineman. Jumping up to this, we'll make it heavy. And then when you hit, 3 kilometers a second, 3 meters a second, it will cut out. So now with the idea that there's nothing holding your body up, you still have to keep your angles. And that's a lot of fun. Again, we're good at, if you get good at just pulling a heavy weight constantly, I don't think you're going to have the great carryover that you would if you constantly vary the resistance at different positions. We've also done it where you're going to sprint and there's no tension and you get a step or two in and then it picks up tension. This is to deal with people who have contact, whether you're a football player, rugby player, anyone who has contact and has to continue to push on. That way you learn to change your position and keep your shin angles down low when you hit something so you continue to drive. The big thing in NFL football or college football or even high school football is yards after contact. And I know it's the same in rugby, and that's something that we want to work on. But do we actually do that in practice? No, we just going to lift more weights and hope that it happens. Now we've got a way to actually slow you down and see if you can keep your body positions and keep that horizontal force. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to shamelessly plug me and Cal's webinar coming up here. If you're interested, we're calling it the good stuff because it's mostly stuff that we've been working on for the last year and we have yet to present anywhere else. There's that. And while we're switching over screens to Cal, you can go ahead and write down that, or it'll be up on social media. And maybe 1080 will run it for us since we're doing this for them. Go ahead, Cal, I left you 20 minutes. Sorry.
That's all right, Chris. Well, I'll work through it. I'll work off your coattails.
Do I need to do anything to switch off my screen, or are you guys doing that?
I think someone's doing that, actually.
I'm going to go stop sharing my screen.
Cal's confirming there, so you'll be good. Chris, you don't have
confirmed
to.
It. Is it showing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the 1080 system, I have 4 of the sprints, and then I have 2 synchros. One's on the way. Am I correct with that, Peter? I hope it's being shipped.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
But we can't see your screen yet, so you have to push a button there.
Which button?
Come on, 80-year-old man. Do you need a new remote control? The technology is getting past you a little bit.
Click.
Now you're good. You're good there.
There we go.
It is?
Yeah.
So how do I, all right. So but you can see my fat head, right?
Yep, and your screen, and your
presentation. Oh, and my screen. That's great. Oh, that's awesome. That's good to hear. All right.
See it.
Well, my thing well, Chris, thanks for leading up to this, and I appreciate you as a friend, buddy, because I may call people on an idea, and 12 people told me I'm an idiot, but Chris is the only one that thinks I might be right. So this is why I like you, and I appreciate that. So everyone, if you the 1080 synchro, we know.
It's nice to know that I'm number 13 on the list of phone calls.
Well, you were the only one. I should say that. So what I'm going to talk about today is the actual 1080 synchro right here. It's the tower system that we have, and this can be split independently or used between the with a bar between the pillars. So I'm going to go back and folks, I know there's been a trend in force plates. My point to you today is that force plates have many limitations. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think they're great for screening on a limitation of one simple movement, whether it be a squat jump, okay? And you cannot build a training model, and I'm going to get into this, off a force plate. You might be able to identify a certain quality, but you cannot build an entire training model off a force plate. And I'm going to show you how I do that. And I realized this, and look, I'm a fan of force plates. I developed triphasic training off force plates. It made me aware of everything going on. Now, the problem with force plates is, in the force plates, for example, if you're going to do a rack pull, the force plate would be built into the ground here, or on the force plate itself if they're not built into the ground. And you only have a fixed reading for, let's say, strength. You have a one positional reading. Now, you could do multiple tests, but here's the beauty about the 1080 synchro. The same test, so for example, I'm not sure, hopefully this plays for everybody, but I built this up, this sample test, and this is at a high velocity, and I'll talk about the different velocities we did. So there's the example of how we built this up. So what 1080 gives you is the force through an entire range of motion, is the one amazing thing about it. So again, the problem with force plates, it's a fixed spot that'll measure force. You're getting output of force in a complete range of motion. This is where the true benefits come from the 1080, in my opinion. So with a force plate, you'd have to take a higher position, and then if you wanted to get the low squat position, you'd actually have to do force readings there. So you're getting another exercise involved. Well, with the synchro, basically what we did was, the synchro's back here. You can see one pillar really clear, and we hooked the, and there's a squat platform for this. I built my own. Okay, Pete actually helped me with this device where the band, or I should say the strings come out here and venture up, and we built this. Now we have a complete platform that we're going to use for this testing on both of my 1080 synchros. Now, the other factor for the 1080 synchro that you have to realize is the force plates, again, have limitations with each position, and it doesn't move. Where the 1080 synchro, I can test that squat position at any velocity I choose. So if I want to check the athlete's strength, I have 0.3 meters per second. That's my strength. That's what I set that test at. And when I say strength, if they need to work strength, this is my own personal loading model, is when I work strength. So if their strength is down when I test them at 0.3 meters per second, let's say they need to train between 80 and 120% load. That's super maximal. If I want to train them at 0.7 meters per, or test them at the power range, I set the 1080 to 0.7 meters per second. And I then, when I train them, they train between 55 and 80%. And then Pete and I went around a little bit. We didn't go around. He was just talking that, Cal, when I told him about the test, he wasn't sure that people would reach 1.2 meters per second in that squat test to be able to generate that much speed. And he's right. Some people weren't. But what did it tell me? It told me that person lacked ability to generate force at high velocities. So even though the test wasn't valid, it identified who was really poor. And guess what they were? They were slow in my program. So if there's sports scientists out there, we can, and you have to realize how fast this 1080, I throw a belt on them, we hook them up, and we really knock these tests out very, very fast. And I'll tell you how we used that and identified some horrendous limitations in some return to play protocols that I can't believe they cleared them with this one female that we had. So these loads are how I train these particular qualities: strength, power, and speed. What you can do is you can build a profile. So you have a kid that produces a lot of force in this movement at 0.3 meters per second, but drops off compared to everybody else. Your training protocols should then be identified as you need more speed and power. So you're gonna, and like I like all these ways that people are doing these force velocities, but they're limited because they're sticking maybe at one load versus comparing loads across a full spectrum. And the synchro does this for me. It's absolutely the most effective tool that's out there, because again, It's not sticking somebody on a force plate and holding one position and isometrically. It's not sticking somebody at a particular load. This thing can be adjusted, and it's vital. Now, not only do I do the single leg, I'm going to go on a quick rant here about core training. We sent an athlete to a PT to get checked out. This female athlete came back to me. We did an ab flexion test, hooked it up to the synchro, and it's the only way I think I can truly safely test ab flexion strength. She produced 600 newtons. I would say an average male's around 5, maybe 480, healthy, maybe even less for healthy. I don't do normal populations. She comes back from a PT, and this PT we sent her to just to get checked out. She was, it was a one that wasn't in our university system. Said, oh, she's got a weak core. So I walked that PT down, and I'm like, did you test her? And I walked this PT down a path and was like, they're like, no, well, I just kind of know. And I'm like, so I sent her the loads. And I said, now tell me if she's got a weak core. Well, maybe not. And I'm like, well, if you didn't test her and you don't know, each word out of your mouth from this point forward is more useless than the one before it, is the way I felt, okay? Because you just didn't test anybody. You just made some gross, and like, you have no validity with me anymore. You had it, but now you lost it, okay?
It's everyone's answer for everything is when things aren't going right, weak core.
Right?
Weak core.
And basically, Chris, what I did was I had a incline step up. I hooked the 1080 here. I strapped some things, and we'd hold their knees while they were sitting right here. I wish I had a video. I should have got this. I didn't know I was going to go on this rant. And they just ab flexion. They just do a seated ab flexion. And lo and behold, I found huge amounts of force generated. Freshmen walk in, they're very bad. They're not very bad, but they're not what my seniors are. You know what I mean? And you know, I have a 185-pound girl that's pretty lean or 182-pound girl that's lean. It's, you know, that's producing forces as more than most men, let's be honest. So, and here's the thing about this, as I said, you can test strength at low and high velocities, and we play sports at high velocities. Now, I'll give you the example of the injured female, and I'll jump back to a couple slides. So I had an injured female who took a hit, blown ACL, was very stubborn, wasn't concerned about walk on, let's say, a veteran of mine, but was more interested in looking fit than rehabbing. She chose not to rehab with us. We checked her. When she came back, she was cleared by the doctors. She was checked at 0.3 meters per second. Her deficit was 20%, which I don't like it, but I would live with it, okay, at 0.3 meters per second. We jumped her up to 0.7 meters per second. She could only produce, was it roughly between 80, it depends on the rep, between 10 to 20% of the force of what her good leg was producing at 0.7 meters. So there was a 90 to 80% deficit in the ranges at higher velocities. And we had doctors clear this person. And I was like, I went to the trainers, we uncleared them. Now, I'll be honest, since she had a strength level, I could get that back up pretty high in 3 to 4 weeks, the 0.7 meters per second, okay? With that being said, she couldn't even come close, couldn't even get that, right? So my point to you is this can find so many variables. Now, I've given you all these things for testing, but folks, this is by far, there's all these settings on this. I believe it's 7 different ways to do various things. And you can train this this is a training device. This is a better training device than it is a testing device. But here's the deal. You can train and it records everything and go back and look at the data and see that, guess what? It is a testing training all together at once. This is by far the best device I've ever seen. This is why I have 2 of them. And when I say that, I'm telling you that, so you're going, okay, we tested for single reps and they were good. But then you put the athlete through a workout, and when you're in the power range, you realize that at the end of the reps, let's say you're doing 7, 8 reps, they started fatigue. Well, now you know in the power zone, you need to train more work capacity in the power zone. And you didn't have to test that. You just watched the workout and saw that particular limb or that particular quality drop, okay? So this is the beauty of the Synchro 1080 and versus force plates. Force plates are very limited in my opinion. Now the Synchro, I think I would roughly have probably, we came up with about 10 to 12, Derek and I, and Brandon and Patrick, tests that you could run. And if we have a problem, we will run those. But we're basically down to the single leg squat. If you have a hamstring problem, I can test it. I don't do it. The bench press, because again, this device told me that, I'll give you some numbers. These numbers aren't exact, but I have two kids that walk in the door and they can produce 300 pounds of force on the Synchro in the bench press movement. One actually benched maybe 275, okay? And the other one benched 245. So these kids are the same strength, but one's a terrible bencher. So you may not get that kid to bench as well as he could, or you may actually jump him up when you get the right technique. But my point is I get a true reading, and I'm taking the skill of the lift out of it to get true measurements. Now, the next thing I'm going to bring up is my Performance Made Simple website. And the reason I bring this up is that this, in my opinion, is one of the best training tools I've ever dealt with. It's
I would agree.
Yep. It's an indicator. It's basically a rate limiter ID tool. So you run a 10 and 20 yard dash and you can go to Performance Made Simple and plug in numbers. I went through 20 years of my numbers of 10 and 20 that I kept and matched up with squat, came up with some formulas. Tyler Bosch helped me refine some things on it, and a scientist at the U. And the 20%, so what it is you run a 20 yard dash, and I'll jump to here. You have a wide receiver that runs a 2.7, 20. You have a linebacker that runs a 2.7, 20. And here's the deal. Because of the 10 yard split in the body weights, you will get a different training output. So my point to coaches are, you can actually hook up the 1080 sprint and get this done in a 20 yard dash. It will take those intervals. And what happens is you can basically, there's the website, and I'm rushing. We'll give you this slide so you can go to the website itself. There's a lecture here on how to use the website, and it's really simple. You just plug it in numbers. So this website will tell you plug in a 10 and 20. It'll tell you if your athlete needs strength or power training or speed training. So basically what I do is for 2 weeks, I test an athlete in a 20 yard dash. And then for 2 weeks, I focus on that particular quality, whether it's a strength reading or a speed reading. Now, folks, you can get two athletes with a 2.7 and a 10, and when they look, they ran the same time, but they have two completely different programs. They are bought in. This is what has happened. And the drills that Chris gave you, you can modify them or use particular drills for strength, power, and speed. So I'll just give you some basic ones. The one Chris gave you, you can modify those for any ranges of these things. But so for like a strength reading on a 1080 with a 1080 sprint training, I'll use resistance running. You can do a ton of resistance at acceleration and top end speed if you choose to. The pro agility, you add the resistance. Even with some of my super strong athletes, I found you might even do an uphill resistance for acceleration with a 1080 together. So this is just an example, and I'm being very basic compared to what Chris is doing, but I'm just making coaches understand that when you get a speed reading, these are the qualities that you switch to. You can get a power reading from that 1020 tool, which then you can do acceleration training still, assisted running. I like some lateral running where it's kind of a crossover step with a bound, or you can do assisted bounding in your running, being pulled by the 1080 to get into the power zone. Or Chris likes prime times, and you can do assisted maybe in the speed zone, but in the power zone you may do resisted, or it depends on the level of athlete, really, I think, what you would do with them. Because if they're super strong, you may do some resisted. If they're super explosive, you may do, or they're super slow, you may want to do assisted with various drills. And the speed reading here on the 1080, you can do overspeed training that Chris talked about, especially flying 10s. Real big fan of those. I think Chris was right when he told me, you know, 20s, flying 20s and 30s, the form breaks down, and it really does. It really does. unless they're a super veteran speed development and elite sprinter. But he's right. Holding 10 flying 10s is optimal. Now look, folks, with this tool, I had to make sure it worked. So I had my 1080s and I put them on the shelf for part of the summer last year, and I didn't do them because of the fact that I had to make sure that this tool, this performance made tool, simple website, or the formula there was working. Now, here's what I found. It identifies your weakest link. Folks, this is scary. If you graph out what the athletes did, roughly, and this wasn't just me, this was other coaches that used it, 20% of the athletes followed the typical periodization model. This makes me sick that I screwed it up for 2 decades. And if you follow typical periodization, you'll get it right in more advanced athletes only 20% of the time. I'm talking optimal. Guess what? I sat with a group of researchers who talked with me, and I told them this. I told them the 20%, and they were like, "Oh, that's not good." I'm like, "Yeah, how about this, you clowns?" You know what I mean? Like, you got to do something for the profession. And they're like, "People don't listen to you." Well, because you're not doing anything that great. I'm like, if you flipped the modern periodization model, you were more correct 30% of the time. The athlete's body told me that they need to go the reverse periodization model. And I didn't know this until at the end of the summer when you graph this. And then the other 50% were mixed. But you can see how you can use this training tool it's a fluid periodization. It's the fastest way to progress any human. It's to listen to their body. It's a 10-20 measurement. That's all you need. You can use the 1080, you can use timing gates. I have coaches just have a video with cones, and then they stop the time on the video, mark it, and they have it. Takes a little longer. My timing gates, they just run through. I have it. We plug in it. They walk in the weight room, and you do a speed, power, or a strength protocol. I have 13 different training zones. You can look at them all. This website will split it basically up into 7 different. So if you have a strength, and between strength and power, it'll tell you to work strength and power at the end of the week. And you can take a look. I've linked lectures to it. Chris took a lot of my time, but I got through it all. I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully everybody takes a look at that website, because I'm telling you, this is periodization the way it should be. I knew periodization was flawed for 20 years. I couldn't figure it out. I think I have figured it out. Yep, I was wrong for 20 years. My wife was right. Everyone was right. I've been wrong a lot. Chris thinks I'm not wrong here, so I'm going to go with this. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you. Peter's back here. What do you say, Ola? We have, it's 2 minutes left on the clock. Should we just leave all the questions to a recorded Q&A?
Yeah, I think probably we'll leave it for a Q&A session, because
Is there anyone that repeats? Is there any repetitive question? And we can answer one real quick if
it's kind of hard to sift through here real quick to answer that question. Yeah, let's go for the recorded Q&A. So everybody who's listening here, it's the same web page you signed up. You can go back and view all the presentations, this one and the ones in the past, and sign up for the new ones as well. So just click in there in a day or two, and you can see the questions and answers. Might as well go on my camera here as well. So yeah, thank you guys. That was really good content. I'm sure everybody appreciates the hands-on, tips, ideas, thoughts that you're bringing up here and presenting. I know it's really appreciated. Just looking at the questions also, I know that's a fact. We sure want to, that was not a shameless plug, Chris, for your webinar here next week. Was it next week?
It's next Tuesday. Yeah,
so we'll include that in the information we send out to all the participants with a link to it. And yeah, and again, as you heard, Chris, and is it both Cal and Chris? Are you going to do that webinar together, or is it?
It's the two of us.
Yeah, so then the guys will go deeper into this, and I'm sure many other interesting topics as well. So with that, thank you so much, guys. And I'm going to just show a couple of pictures here that about the upcoming stuff. And this relates to, of course, a lot of you talked about overspeed, Chris. Next week, we're going to have Matt Ray. He's the Director of Sports Science at University of Alabama on the football team there. He and his strength coach, Dave Ballou, started at Alabama here a few months ago in the winter, previously Indiana. And Matt's as well an avid user of 1080 Sprint. He's going to talk about overspeed specifics. I know he's going to get into a lot of things about neuroplasticity on overspeed. And I'm sure that's going to be a really good drill down as well into that topic. It's very interesting and under-researched area. Would you agree, Ola?
Absolutely, and I think what Chris and Ken has done on the overspeed, that's one of the first ones out there, really.
Yeah.
It's not much content out there, so it's certainly an area that should be explored more.
Yeah. So sign up for Chris and Cal's webinar next week. We'll send the link out. Sign up for, if you haven't done it yet, sign up for the one with Matt Ray here next Thursday. And with that, I would like to thank you everybody for joining. And we'll also, of course, have the recorded version of this up on our website in a day or two. So with that, thanks so much. Hang in there, stay safe, stay healthy. These are challenging times, but hopefully we'll have see the light at the end of the tunnel here eventually. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.